Good morning. Hey, I still got one thing turned on, don't I? It's been a little bit of fun this morning. I got to figure out which one's talking to me. I hope everybody's doing good. I think I know which one it is. Let's see here. There we go. Everything was muted before, and then it was unmuted. Good morning, Arthur. You made it home. Good to see you. Luigi, how are you doing, buddy? Hope things are well over there in the Alps. Hope you're doing well. Looking forward to playing with some resin and some airbrush and some dye here. Just having a little bit of fun in South Georgia. Gets cold and windy out here today. Good morning, Don. Snowy Michigan. Yes, a lot of people up north are getting snow. I've got some friends there in New Jersey said that it's a snow day and they're going to be joining in with us. Yeah, here, cold, windy, humid, kind of in the miserable. I almost decided to wear a coat underneath the turning jacket here this morning, but I decided, well, it's okay. Yeah, Michael, I'm missing the snow in PA. You saw the pictures of the house in Colorado. It could be like that. Hey, Mary Alice, thanks for popping in. Corey's here. All right, the gang's all popping in. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I'm going to have a lot of fun. I hope you do. I hope you learn a lot. Going to try something, fairly new. You have seen me before out here with the resin and applying dyes to the resin. And this piece is a piece of resin that we cast a couple of weeks ago. Good morning, Jeff. Good to see you, buddy. We cast this a couple of weeks ago, and I really thought that it looked very similar to some wood grain, even though it is resin. And so I got the idea of working on, with a combination of the technique I've been using of adding dye to over top of a resin to give it the wood grain effect. So you see the piece that I put in the promo post and that I posted yesterday. I found that really cool old wooden lidded box. And that's kind of the style that I was looking for. I didn't make that piece, no claims to it, just found it searching on the internet in some window. That's kind of what I want to achieve. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how this works. First, we'll turn the basic box, and it's going to be a lidded box. And the reason I chose that image that you saw is the lid on that one sits out and over. You know how oftentimes when we make a lidded box, don't know if I have one, I think it's in the house, where the lid is, the sides are smooth. Well, I wanted one to have a lid that went out and came back in and kind of sat, I think of it as an overlay lid. That's kind of what I was thinking of, and I saw that picture finally, and I said, hey, that's it. And then it has that nice taper down, and then a base. And I said, that fits into everything that I kind of had in mind, because this piece, we put the brass insert into last week. We put one of these guys in, which is what's holding it on the mandrel right now. So I thought, how cool is that? I can do this lidded style box, have a brass insert for a base in the future, make the shape that I saw, or close thereof. I don't have an image of it. I don't have a picture. So all I have is the picture in my mind of that piece today. I've got a pretty good photograph in there in my head. I'm not trying to make it exactly like that anyway, but that's the general concept. It's a pagoda box, like a pagoda box, Jeff says. So that's the plan here today. So the first thing I did is I mounted this piece on the mandrel so that would be the center axis of the piece. Now, what I want to do is just turn it enough to get a good tenon right here. And I've got a sorbet chuck with 2 3/4 inch jaws, they refer to them as. They're about 2 3/8 on the inside. And then I've got a set of easy wood over here, the easy wood chuck, with their 2 3/8, which measures about 2.5 on the inside. So I'm set up for either way to chuck this guy right into the existing tenon, but I want to make this tenon true to the brass insert that's already in here, so that when it gets mounted to a base eventually, everything lines up. So that's why we're here in this stage first. I've also got my dyes, and I brought out brown and orange, black, and olive green today. And my airbrushes are over here. I managed to mount my airbrush holder over out of the way, so I didn't have to try and put it up here on the lathe itself. So that being said, I think I feel fairly organized for me. You guys know how I roll. Sometimes I'm rooting around for looking for something, and I'm certain that I'll be looking for something today. But it's live. It's 2 hours of fun, so let's have some fun. First thing, let's get a tool rest in here, and let's just kind of get this guy into a tenon. As you can tell, it does already have that basic tenon here, but this one isn't super clean. And when it rotates, when I undo the spindle lock and put it in forward, you can see that it's not completely true to, I got sawdust in my eye there. It's not completely true to the center on the brass. But I'm just going to turn it down just enough to make that tenon work. And we're going to bring up the tailstock up here just to hold this guy in place. Make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And so I'll end up, once I get it mounted in the truck, I'm going to part this through pretty quick. I'll go ahead and get it round. Then I'm going to part the lid off, and we'll make the lid first. We'll get that worked out. And then we'll make the body fit the lid, and we'll just kind of keep working our way from there. And then we'll start playing with the airbrush colors. And I'm going to go move a mouse real quick, because I see an arrow in the middle of one of the screens that's going to drive me nuts. You guys can't see it, but I can. They crawl out there on the screens on me and annoy me. I hope the stream does like it's supposed to today. It was faltering a little bit earlier. It was dropping frames and trying to buffer. You may have seen me testing in the Monday Methods stream, in the Monday Methods wood and resin turning group, and pop back over here. So I did add the private group that Spiracraft has, the Monday Methods wood and resin turning community. This is now also playing into that Facebook page. So I was testing that there this morning, and I was testing on my personal page, and I had a couple of drops. So hopefully it doesn't give me any issues. I went in the house and turned off all the computers in there. I mean, I should have enough bandwidth, but I think maybe because we are on Comcast cable and the wind is blowing like crazy, so maybe if the wires are shaking out there at the poles, it might be giving me a little bit of trouble. Hopefully you don't have any issues today. But that said, let's get going here. So I got my tool rest. Gonna work with the negative rate cutters. And I think, because I want to make this tenon, I think I'll just use the little guy. This is the micro, and that'll be what we'll use to make this, get this tenon cleaned up. And the detail tool. Again, I don't want to make it any smaller than I have to, because I'm kind of pushing the bounds, and I want to get the best fit with my chuck. But I don't want to take any more away from here than I have to. And I wish that cutter was square, but it's not. So we'll deal with that with the little detail tool. I was thinking about it this weekend. I'm gonna make a square cutter. I don't have the carbide, but in a negative rate, I'm gonna make a square negative rate cutter to make these tenons. All right. Okay, Lan says, Lan, the feeds should all be the same. They all go out from one, and the service splits out the feed into the multiple feeds, so they should be the same. I pay them for them to be the same, so we'll see. Good morning, Brian. You made it. Good to see you, buddy. I love that piece you posted yesterday. Let's get a little speed here. We'll see just what we end up with. Again, I don't want to make it any smaller than I have to. Going to work on a little shoulder here. So that's real close to being, it's a little shiny right there. It's not perfect round, but it's real close. Again, we're not going to have a whole lot of shoulder up here. But I would like a little more. And I may end up having to go down to a smaller set of jaws because I'm right, that's why I set up 2 chucks. I'm right on the window of size here. And yet I'm trying to get the most firm grip that I possibly can. And I'm going to go ahead and clean up this edge just to fuzz right here, just to know that I've got a nice surface. I want to see what I'm working with. Okay, so that's just a little bit of shiny there. Not too bad. I'm going to try something for yucks. It could be a disaster. We'll see. It depends on how sharp this is. It's actually a non-negative rate cutter. This is just a standard cutter because I'm trying to square up this corner right up in here. I'm not doing anything aggressive, just a standard cutter right here. And now I'm getting a much cleaner profile because, as you can see, the square cutter and the radius square is fairly, let's see if I can get the best look for you. Maybe on the black. And it's kind of hard to see the radius because it rolls over so much. But you don't get a nice clean square corner with the radius. Nothing wrong with it. But you can't get a nice, clean, sharp, crisp edge right in here like I'd like. So, let's see, where are we at? Okay. Now we're going to find out just which chuck this will fit in. And hopefully I don't have to change any jaws. I'll go ahead and pop back up here as we take this guy off. So that's just a little step to get us started. Get ourselves over into a chuck. One thing I see I need to do that I didn't do. I need to clean up the bottom of this. It's not uniform, so let me make that uniform. I don't know what I was thinking. I completely missed on this bottom edge right here. Let me throw on my mask real quick. Just to make sure that I don't touch in the bottom of my jaws. I was too busy talking and not paying attention to that little issue right there. That's concave, and it's plenty concave, and that's fine. But I wanted to make sure that outer edge right there was nice and flat. And it's a whole lot easier to catch it now than it would be to catch it after the fact. Okay, that looks a lot better. Still not perfect. Let me flatten that out just a little bit more. I know, I'm being particular today. There we go. Okay. Now I'm happy. Well, thank you, Hillary. Thank you very much. I always have fun out here. And we'll pop this guy off of here. I am really amazed at how much this piece of resin does look like a wood grain. Of course, I've never had wood grain with glitter in it, but that's what makes it cool. So let's try the Sorby chuck first and see just which one's going to have the best fit. I want it to be just as close as possible. Okay, so I went just a ever so slight. My jaws are touching right here. On the Sorby chuck, there's a gap right here. I'll show you in the overhead. So in the Sorby jaws, this gap is built into the jaw. And this is the gap where we open and close. And as you can see, that is real close right there. That one is virtually touching, and that one. And I'm not 100% convinced that we would get the grip that we want. It may, and that would be like virtually the absolute perfect circle. Let's just check it in the Easy Chuck and see which one is the closest. That's like I say, that's why I set them up, because had I gone just even a fraction more smaller in the tenon, it would have been definitely too small. Okay, and so the Easy Chuck, it is too small. Yeah, or the chuck is too big. I would have to go down to the next size down in the jaws. And I see, because I had to round this and true this up, I didn't know exactly where I was going to be. So let's try the Sorby chuck and we'll see what happens. If we think we're getting vibration, we'll change and put 1 3/8 onto the Easy Chuck, because it'll be faster to change. If it works fine with these jaws and we don't get any vibration, then we're all good. Sometimes when you don't know exactly what you're going to get, you kind of got to do just a little bit of experimenting. Doo-doo-doo-doo. I was going to go over and get a wrench for this the other day, and we were over there, but I completely forgot about it. So hopefully we'll be fine. Let's see what happens here. We crank this down. Lock the spindle. Well, it feels like it's a good grip. It feels solid. I mean, it is right up to being like all but closed, but there is some compression there, so I think we are getting the grip. I mean, that's just about as close as you can get and still have some compression going on. So I'd like to say that I did it perfect, but I didn't do it. That's just a coincidence that it landed up there. It's a nice fit down in the dovetails over in here. Let me get my handy dandy ice pick pointer. So I've got a great fit right here. I know it's a little bit hard to see from the distance in the camera. Right down in there, that looks good. So I'm all happy with that. Okay. So now let's just get this guy into shape. Just get it into the round. Cleaned up, and then we'll part off the top, which will give us some access to see what the resin cross grain. I say cross grain because resin doesn't have a grain to it, but this resin definitely has stripes or striations running down through it. So we clean it up, and then we'll part off what'll be the lid. So we'll see what this looks like going through on the inside. That's going to be the big mystery. Good morning, Larry. How you doing, buddy? All right. We'll turn about 1,000 RPMs here, just to get everything cleaned up. Put on my super duper flip up mask. And let's see. Either one will work. We'll start with the overhead for you. Again, I like to start with the smaller diameter. This is the number 1 hollower. It's a CI5. So it's the same cutter on the little micro tool, but you get the nice big handle and all the grip that goes with it. Everybody's favorite tool, and with the Easy Wood line. And we'll just get this guy into balance, nice and round. Now this is going to have a lot of taper down at the bottom eventually. Let's see, I may want to rotate that cutter. I've been using that one for a little while. I'm just going to stop, clean out the head with my ice pick. Always clean out the screw on these Easy Wood tools or any of your carbide inserts. Always clean out the screw head before you put your wrench to it. Unfortunately, these are so small, there's no marking, no registration marking. I'm just going to turn that a little bit. Although it felt like it wanted to rotate back, so I turned it a little bit more. There we go. Use the short end of the lever, not the long end, to tighten it up. And let's get back in here and see what we get. That cuts a little better. And if you're wondering why don't I use the kind of square radius, but you know, in the square carbides are considered the roughing tool, but since it's a radius, it's really a finishing cutter, and so I don't want to dull the edge on my nice finishing cutter just doing this rough work. Pop you over here to the end. We'll clean up this top a little bit. All right, almost round, still not quite there. Now that it's mostly round though, I'll switch over to the larger mid-size. It's got the CI3 negative rake cutter on it. It needs to be rotated as well. So let's stop and give it a quick rotation. People are always asking me out on the road, how do you know when a cutter's dull? You can tell the difference after a while. You'll get used to it. And we're on the end, so you can't see my head there. Give that a twist. Go back to the short end, and there we go. See, I like this mask that flips up because when I flip it up, I can talk to you and you don't get that muffled sound coming off the... Hey, Jim from Jasper, how are you, Jim? My dad's wood-turning traveling buddy to Apple Ridge, and the new club that's there, I guess I shouldn't call it new, it's been around for a while now, in the Canton area. Well, thank you for joining in this morning, Jim. We appreciate it. Okay, that cuts much better changing it too. Okay, so now it's time to decide just how much We want to make how much lid we want to leave. And I'm actually going to use the Carter & Son parting tool for this. I love this. It works great even on the resin. I'm going to just go over here to my wheel. I don't even turn the grinder on. I know you can't see it because I don't have camera 4 set up, like I keep promising you that I will. But I'm just going to rotate the wheel by hand. I'm not even going to turn the grinder on. And just freshen up this edge. Just a little bit more adjustment on the platen. I'm just doing the very bottom side. There's no need to turn it on because you don't need to move that much material. Just clean up the edge. So all I did was cleaned up, and you can see it's fresh and shiny right there when I get the light on it just right. So I just cleaned up the very bottom, this little bottom profile right here. And let me put it over in the overhead. So all I did, and this is matches the radius of the wheel as well. So I just cleaned up that bottom edge and got a nice clean sharp tip right there. You can see that nice shiny tip, and that's all we need. What are we making, Donnie? We're making a mess. We're making a lidded box out of resin, and we're going to attempt to give it a faux wood grain look with aniline dyes and the airbrush. Okay, let's see, overhead, we're in the overhead. Overhead is good. What am I going to do here? How much lid do I want to keep for this? Probably something like that. Is it's going to sit over, and see if that's my, let's say that's my entry point. I need to allow for curvature here, maybe a little finial top or something up in here. But I still want to leave enough here to have the proportion as I turn that down. And again, well, one of the things that's really different, in this case, we're not worrying about matching the grain. You know how you typically, oh, my dad says it's snowing in Jasper. Cool. Don't go shoveling, Dad. We don't have to worry about matching the grain so much with the overlay lid and in the resin. Although this one, you know, it's going to match still. We'll be able to match it up. So we're not going to take a lot out. But when you're making a regular lidded box, you want this curve to be as small as possible, because the two grains are actually touching. Here we're going to overlap. This is a 16th inch parting tool. I love this guy. Now that smoke, you don't want to breathe that smoke. So I'm actually stepping over to the side. I don't have my mask on. I've got a organic filter style mask for that. You'll probably hear me cough, because that smoke is kind of rough. But if I had my mask on, I couldn't talk to you. So we'll just step away for a second. Because breathing the chemicals is not good. Get rid of the tailstock for the moment. So I've got about 3/4 of an inch left to go in there, in the cut. I know that the camera's not directly overhead, so you can't see that. But yes, indeed, when you're turning resin, especially if you're doing a part like I'm doing here, and you see that smoke that you were seeing there, wear an organic cartridge, or do it like I did. And I just walked away. I mean, the microphone's here. I walked 5 feet away to get away from it and let it clear. have to worry about this breaking when I go through, because it's solid resin. One cough out of that. Yeah. Okay, so that makes a nice clean part right through there, and you can see in the end. So now we get a little cross section of what our resin looks like. And here's the thing we can do. I have a little squirt bottle of denatured alcohol, and I'll just take a paper towel just to give ourselves a clue of what this resin is going to look like a little bit. Are you going in straight, or are you making two cuts to prevent binding? Don, I went straight in. In this case, I wasn't getting any binding. So I didn't need to make a relief cut. Had the tool started to bind, I would have made a relief cut. But since it's a 1/16 of an inch, and it's only what, an inch and a half, inch and a quarter inside of this, I didn't need to. Had I felt it start to bind, I would have made a relief cut like you're asking about. And sometimes you definitely want to. And let's go overhead. This doesn't stay long, but you get an idea of kind of what this looks like. And though it is resin, it does have a little bit of a wood look to it. And we're going to try and add more. And so there's our lid, and there's our body. Okay, so, and I also have this out, again, this is denatured alcohol, because I'm probably going to experiment with thinning down my dyes a little bit. I haven't tested this one for color, so you know me, I like to wing it live in public and see what happens. So I could thin my dye down in the airbrush, and I'm not gonna calculate it and measure it. I'm just gonna have fun with it. But just using a little bottle like that is a great way to put to thin your dyes down. If you're just you don't take a big jar and put it in there and all that. Okay, so I said I want to work on my lid first, or my top. And I may switch chucks. We'll see how this works here. Because I'm going to make the inside of it first, hollow out the inside, and then we'll turn around and reach inside the lip and hold it the other direction. Then once we've got our top pretty well worked out, then we'll put our body back in and we'll start on the body. All right, I'm going to move that out just a little bit. Let's see if I can get this right where I want it. These jaws have a dovetail and then a serration. And I'm actually holding on the serrations in the back. If you see where I'm not touching up here, but I'm touching back in the back on the back serration, so my grip is fine. Give it get a good snug grip there. It turns nice and true. So that's pretty good. Okay, time to start having a little fun. We'll make sure the outside is true. Determine a wall thickness. I'll take this tailstock out of the way. I don't need it right now. Although that looks quite true on the outside, I'm just going to clean it up just a fuzz. Just to be certain. Okay. Turn our tool rest. Let's see, I'm going to zoom in for you, and hopefully it stays in focus because I've got it set at a fixed focus, but I want to get you right in there. I'll watch over to Facebook there, my feed there, to test and see how that looks for a focus. So I'm a little bit high. So I just, out here on the outer edge, I just want to clean that up, and I'm going to bevel it in slightly. And that's nice and smooth. And then I'll take my number 1 hollower again, the bigger tool, and I'm actually going to back the tool rest up just a fuzz. And I'm turning about 1100. And we'll start to take this out, and I'm going to just say, we'll start with a thicker wall thickness, and then we'll cut that back. Nice pink ribbons coming off today. I should save those for a Valentine's Day project. The other thing I have thought about on this piece is putting a brass insert in the top, and then making another type of attached finial to it. I'm kind of on a brass insert kick these days. Sometimes you just roll with what's feeling good to you. So we'll see if we have enough material for that, and if I decide to do it or not. I'm going to stop and check my reference for my thickness, so I'll just look here. You know, I've got about an inch or so, and I'll just use this fancy method here. And I see, you know, I haven't gone very far, but I do want to leave room for everything else. So I just need a nice dish inside there. Is all the space we really need. And so now I'll start to thin that. I'm going to thin this wall down a little bit more. The resin is pretty strong. It's not ultra strong. But we can take this away. So that we don't have a huge ledge. I just want enough thickness here so that I have a profile and get a shadow line. Okay, so now what I do want to do, I want to make a nice straight side. So to do that, I think I will use the little detail style tool, which you can just see coming up into the picture there. And I'm actually going to relieve it just a little bit so that it's flared out, so that it doesn't, how do I explain it? So it doesn't go onto a cone. And the way I do that, I'm going to get my inside calipers, and we'll just leave the camera right here for you. And I'll move my inside calipers down. These were another set of calipers my father gave me. I've had these things for years. So I'm going to set these to the right at the outer edge. Okay, and then it should get looser as I go in, and that's how we'll check it. We want it to get a little bit bigger as it goes in. All right, so we're not quite there yet. And these calipers will let you measure that really well. And you can also control how much of this flat wall, chamfered wall that you have. So they're nice and snug out here on the outside, and they just start to loosen up. I want to go a little bit more. We don't want the lid, and we can play with our lid on the fit on the body as well. But you don't want it to rattle, and you don't want it to be so tight that it's hard to take it on and off. There, that's good. So now there's just a little couple thousandths play inside there. So our fit will be right at the very edge. That's exactly what I wanted. Okay. We'll keep those guys handy. I don't need that big guy at the moment. And I think I'll just go ahead and clean this up with a round cutter in here. Get that little nub off of there. Clean that up. Now I'll take the radius kind of square tool and come across here and really clean this up. And the other thing I need to do, because now I'm working on my finishing cuts, I want to make sure that my tool rest is not got any nicks in it or anything. And I'm zoomed in pretty tight here, but you'll see. I'm just going to come across here real quick with my flat file and file the whole banjo, the whole tool rest, not the banjo, but the tool rest itself, with a flat file just to make sure it's clean. You can throw a little wax on it if you want to help it slide a little bit better. So I take the radius cutter and we go back to the end for you. I'm just going to work my way. It's hard for you to see, but I'm going to point with the illustrious ice pick from right in here. That's where my flat starts, and I got a little bit of curve. I'm just going to work that away and smooth this face out. Trying to keep my head out of the camera line there for you. Trying to get rid of as many tool marks as possible. Okay. Now normally I would sand it, but for the sake of time today, I'm not going to sand this. I'm not terribly worried about the inside of it anyhow. But now that I have my grip here, I'll be able to turn this around and put this on a set of jaws and expand into this. So I have enough to grip this. Got a little from the chatter here. I'll show you with the cleaner. The natured alcohol. Got a little chatter pattern in there. And this whole thing's going to get sprayed in satin lacquer. I don't know if the chatter is going to show up or not. But there's what our inside looks like. That's pretty clean and smooth. With a coat of lacquer on it, that'll be fine. Okay. So, I'm going to pop this out now, and we'll turn it around. And again, we may have to play with what jaws are going to grip it the way we want. We'll see if these go down small enough or not. Will they drop inside? Not quite. So I was trying to hopefully get those to go inside there. See on the end, there's oh so close, but not quite. And I'm certain that the easy jaws are too big, so we're going to change chucks here, and we'll put on the easy chuck and then change jaws on it. So we'll pop back up here, we'll change chucks and jaws. Project like this, you have several changes going on sometimes for these different profiles. And I'm certain that's not going to go in there. Nope. So here's my tool, chuck tool. With my heater going, my feet are staying warm. As long as my feet stay warm, I'm okay. I'm happy. It's when my feet get cold that I get grumpy. So I'll drop down the size and jaws. Those were the 2 3/8. Pop over here and get the 1 3/8. If you're looking for convenience of jaw changing, the Easy Chuck is the way to go. It is quick and easy to change jaws. Okay. Now we'll expand this out. And it'll hold that nicely. Now I can work on this now, or I can leave it for later. As I think about it, that's going to do fine. It's just, I can go either way. I'm just thinking about this. I'm thinking ahead here and make this outside profile, or I can wait till I have the rest of it done. So I think, well, let's go ahead and turn on this a little bit, because this isn't going to change. And that turns nice and true. So we'll just kind of round this over. That one. We'll get a little profile going here, so that when we work on this piece, which is going to go in here, we can kind of think about how it matches up and how it looks aesthetically with our lid that we've topped. This won't be finished. We'll come back and finish it. But I think that's how I'm going to go about this today. It doesn't really matter which way you go about it, because it's 2 different pieces and you can go any way, anytime. Okay, I think that'll work. We'll leave it in the overhead for you. $7.53. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on the piece, because we want to be sure we get to play with the coloring. Got to remember to flip your face shield down, Bradley. Might be interesting to watch this from the end as well. And if I remember from the image that I have in my mind, this has got a fairly thin little ledge right here. that's the overhang part of that image. This is the Chromacraft resin that Spirocraft carries. This stuff turns wonderfully. It's just fantastic to turn. This piece has been cured, or cast about 2 weeks now, so it's nicely cured. And again, I'm not going to complete this entirely. I'm going to leave it a little bit undone, but I want to just clean it up so we know what we're working with. We'll come back and detail this guy to the nth degree. If we don't get to it today, I'll do it at another time. But we have our general shape here now. In the one that's in the picture, there's a finial on top of all this. Okay. Good deal. We'll see what that looks like. Just in its natural resin colors. So it's very pretty in the resin. It's got that gold. I put gold pearlescent powder in with it. So it has a wonderful look to it. But we're going to add some other colors with the airbrush and just see how that goes, how that plays out today. Okay, so let's pop that out. Our lid is ready to fit to the body. We'll pop our lid off and set it off to the side. And we're going to change chucks again real quick. Put our Sorby chuck back in here. "34 degrees, Corey says. Well, that's just kind of slop. Is it snowing, Corey? That'd be kind of sloppy snow. A sloppy snow day. Lost it. Too many things on my table. Another thing I have here is a little piece of, I don't know, it's just ash or something. So I can test the dye colors. So we can play with what colors the dye is and think about how it goes against our resin work, different things like that. So I made sure I kept something like that out. All right. Looking for the wrench. Back into its tenon. And since our tenon is true to the brass insert on the bottom, when we make a base for this at some point, that will all be good. We'll get this nice and snugged up. That's a nice fit. Corey says he had a light dusting last night. Okay. Not enough to get the toboggans out, huh? All right. So now our next step, so we're still the same size right now, as you can see. So we'll trim this down to where our lid fits, and then we'll taper this way down. And at some point, I can actually be able to take this off and put it on the mandrel, because we'll want to get tapered down for that. The way the piece in the picture goes, it tapers way down. So we'll be able to put this into the mandrel, put it on the mandrel to make that real fine taper. But we'll start just with the basic, getting it shaped and the lid fit, hollowed out. And in this case, I'm going to kind of go back and forth. I'll hollow some, do the shape some, go back and forth till I have it just right. I don't want to commit with taking too much out until I've got the shape the right way I want it, but I want to keep some strength in it too at the same time. So it's kind of a back and forth kind of thing. So let's pop you to the overhead. Get on my face mask. And I've got a fair bit of material to move. So I think I'll start with the number 1 hollow burr just because it's a larger cutter, or I mean smaller cutter. I can move, I can lean on it pretty hard. Now what I could do, and I should, let me do this. Let me get my other calipers. Here's what we can do. We'll take our outside calipers. We know that our inside calipers are set to the inside of our piece. So we'll set our outside calipers, which are very close. So we'll make them a little bit bigger for right now. Okay, that'll get us in the ballpark. So now we can test right in here. And know that we're good. That is just about right. That'll leave just enough for adjustment, for fine tuning. Oh, we get in a little bit further there so you can see. So having a set of inside and outside calipers are really helpful. And I'm actually going to open those up just a little bit more in case I cut too much. I'd rather have to take a little bit more off than because I can't put it back on. Okay? All right. So we've got those handy, and it's not too much more to go there. So actually, let me do this. I'm going to change tools here and go over to the radius tool, get more of a square flat cut here. So that says we're just about matching. Okay, we got plenty of room. Ah, dropped my lid. Closing in on it nicely, getting very close there. And the same thing I'm going to do here. I'm going to have a slight chamfer going down so that the largest diameter is right at the very top edge. Just get some of that extra out of the way. So that was just about a press fit there. That is a press fit. That presses right on. So that is too tight for taking it on and off. Now, if we were making, get this off my here. If we were making a traditional lidded box right now, then this would be the kind of fit we would want to turn this into a uniform profile from the top to the bottom. But since we want this overhang, we're going to leave it that way. And it's a little tight, so we're not going to turn this together. Now, we might spray it together with the colors when we're working on our dyes and all that. But that is just a nice snug fit. So we'll take just a fuzz. Actually, what I'm going to do, and just think about this to be safe, I'm going to leave it at this press fit so that if I inadvertently come back up here and take a little bit extra off, I haven't taken too much. So I'm going to leave myself a little fudge factor, if you will, up here at the upper rim, and go ahead and start working on my profile going down. Then I can always take more off of here, but I can't put it back on. So if I make it perfect now, and then for some reason I forget about that, and my tool slides back up, I might take off too much and have it kind of loose, and then I'd be unhappy. So I'm going to leave myself a little extra there. Dad says that will be a little thin to start. Oh no, Dad, there's plenty there. There's plenty here. Not a problem at all. We're not taking any more off the lid. Of course, I see you said never mind. All right, so work our way down the body. I know where I'm at there. What I'm going to do, let me do this. I'm going to take a marker, and I'm just going to take and mark this, if I can find a dark one. The cobalt will do. I'm just going to make myself a line so I have a point of reference to not go to. So it's just a cobalt marker. And that just lets me know not to turn up there, okay? And you can't see it because of the tool rest. There you go. So I put the dark line on there with one of the die markers so that I know don't touch that, okay? Leave that area alone right there. That's a good safety valve for you so that you won't cut where you don't want to. Okay. Let's take some mass out of this a little bit, and then we're going to go inside. So we're going to go back and forth. And we're in the overhead. Yep, so we're in good shape for you. I'm going to go kind of fast because I don't want to run out of time here. So with this bigger tool, I can lean on it pretty hard. And I'll let you see how it looks from the end as well. So you can see from the front just how my stance is and how I'm working. Just keeping the strands off of me. Pick up the cut, come right on down. Little vibration right in there, which is kind of odd for where it is when it's in the middle, but basically just trying to keep myself out of the way of the strands a little bit. Okay, and that's going to taper. Remember that we're going to put another base on here, so this taper is going to continue
you know, way down to almost to the brass piece that's in the bottom. So we're not going to go, we'll turn it around and we'll turn all this away. So we're going to leave that there, this amount here for strength for taking out the inside when we come into here. Okay? And I dropped my ice pick. So let me clean up that profile a little bit, and then we're going to jump onto the inside. So I'll grab the radius style tool. And this is not the final cuts on this, just general cleaning up. Okay, so let me adjust the end camera because it's a little too tight right now. So I'm going to back it out just a fuzz and lower it down. Luckily you can't see this going on. I'll zoom it back in so you can see what's going on right inside. Well, just a little teeny bit. Okay. And pop you on the end. And we'll take out the inside again. I'm moving kind of quick because I hadn't even gotten to the playing with the colors yet, and I don't want to go forever long. The beauty of having this brass insert in the bottom is I can, not completely finish this each stage today, especially on this base, and just screw it back onto the mandrel and come back and work on it more. So even if I sanded off the dye that I put on it today or turned off the dye, I can come right back on that mandrel and work on it some more. You could drill it out, but then again, with it being on such a taper, you'd be changing drill bits quite a bit. Though you could run, like, say, a 3/4 inch bit down through there, and it would be faster. But I figured you didn't want to watch me just run a drill bit. So I just keep cutting that nub off in the middle. And this cutter is not brand new. It's doing a good job. If it was brand new, it would work even nicer. But still, these last a long time. Unfortunately, with the negative rakes, you can't resharpen those yourself. You see the little chatters here? That's from some of the vibration we're getting, and that vibration is probably from just in our chuck holding there. Resin does flex a little bit. I mean, I'm leaning on this pretty hard. So like I say, I keep removing each time I make a couple of cuts. I keep removing the nub that forms on the inside edge. Okay, but inside in the middle is what I meant. So now we're talking about the edge. So that when I put it in the on the spindle, on the mandrel, I don't have to worry about it anymore. So because of the arc or the radius of the piece, I need to raise it up, the tool rest up, because the bottom of my tool is actually rubbing. Now I can get a clean cut. So sometimes you have to go slightly above center, and as the radius gets tighter in here, that happens more and more. Because we just want to minimize our sanding that we have to do in the future. Okay, so I'm going to leave that just like that for now.
Just because of the sake of time. And we're going to change this over and put it on the mandrel. I don't believe, obviously, that we'll be making the actual base that this is going to have, because it is going to have a base. Yes, the #1 Hollower Lewis is the go-to tool in Easy Wood's line. Yes, Lorianne, you said you were having a snow day, and I'm glad you're hanging out at home, I hope. Hope you're not out there actually doing anything. Hope you're not shoveling or anything else. It's a rain day here. Wind and rain. Back to my mandrel, and this is the same mandrel that we use for making bottle stoppers. This is the stainless steel bottle stoppers mandrels for that, and for the keyring kits that I make. And then we sell all the components, so it perfectly fits the brass inserts. In that regard, they're self-tapping for the wood. I was going to get a wrench for this at Harbor Freight, and I forgot about it the other day. So now we can put our piece right on here. And it will be lined up true. It should be, because we put it on the center axis earlier when we made the tenon. So now we can turn all this excess material away, and we know what our minimum is down here, so we can finish out this profile right here. You want to make it good and snug. Only 10 inches so far. Oh, good. That's a good reason to stay in the house. You want to make it snug, but not so tight that you can't get it back off, okay? And we don't want to have any vibration along the way either. I love this this little chatter. Not that I did it on purpose, but you see the chatter marks in here if I wanted that. It's kind of cool. Okay. There's our lid that goes on there. Which is too tight, but that's what we know that. So what I think I'll do, I think I'll put the lid on. See if I can't get it pressed on there again. There we go. So now I have the overall look of the piece, right? I can look at how big it is here, and then I can think about what I do here. Maybe I change this profile if I want to up in here, because now we have the whole shape, which is really nice to work with. Okay, this is pressed on pretty tight. I don't think it's going to come off, or if it does, I have on, of course, my handy dandy face shield. Alrighty.
So let's just work some of this away. Down in the bottom here is some spin gems, some faux stone. They just happen to be in the bottom of the cast when I poured stuff in there. And so one thing I am going to do, I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to clean up the very bottom so I know what's flat. I'll take the little detail tool right here. So that I have a nice clean edge right there that I know is true, genuine, true. Now my brass is inset just a little bit. Nice little ring we had there. But I'm not going to go right up to it right now. We'll turn it back around at one time and turn that flush to that. And I just want to make sure that that is nice and flat, and that is. Now at this point you could do a lot of different things with this shape. I mean, you could go any way you want to go. There's no rules here. Any shape that you felt like. Oop, don't do that. That would be a cool bottle stopper art. It'd be a big bottle stopper, but it'd be a bottle stopper you could put if you needed to have a super extra additive for your drink. It could be inside that you just had a few drops of. Try not to hit the mandrel and dull the cutter. One thing about turning resin is with the streamers, it's hard to see ahead of you sometimes. Okay. Now keeping in mind this is solid here, so I don't have to worry, because I only hollowed up to about here. More profile out of this. I'm not sure if I've rotated this cutter. That's the thing with the small cutters, it's always hard to tell if you've rotated them or not unless you can find a way to mark them. Okay, I'm going to give this one a quick rotate because I just don't remember. And I don't think I have a CI6 fresh here. I wish I did. This would be the time to put on a fresh new CI6 negative rate cutter for these finish cuts. But I don't have it handy. And also, I was getting a little vibration there. The cutter was a little bit loose. And that's another thing to check if you're getting vibration. Check that that cutter's not loose. Let's see if this cuts any better. I may do. And that's plenty tight. Tight enough I may not be able to get it off easy. But I can let that left hand edge lead. That's the nice thing about a four-sided cutter. So I can actually adjust that profile as I was making that cut. All right. And that's, so I'm getting some vibration here. That's just making that chatter. So a little bit I turn the speed up to take a little bit of that vibration out. I could bring the tailstock up and put a little pressure on this and it would also help. But kind of get in the way right now. Okay. We're just going to sand that out. All right, so let's trim this for our top fit, our lid. And we're just going to ease on in here ever so slightly. Still just a, I mean it's almost, so it's a squeaky fit. It depends, if you're trying to impress your buddies at the club, you want a vacuum fit. Now this is going to get lacquer on it, so I'm going to make it a little bit looser, but not by much. You see how fine and light a cut I'm taking there? Okay, and that's just about perfect. That's the little vacuum fit. It doesn't bind, but you can feel the vacuum as it goes on and off. So that's a nice fit right there, and we'll stay with that. Okay? All right, cool beans. I'm quite pleased, like I say, with that little vacuum fit there. That's a nice little deal. Okay, so next stage. I'm going to sand this a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and play with the colors because I don't want to run out of time. What RPM am I turning, Corey? Today I got her dialed up a little bit. I turned in about 1700 right there to get that vibration out. Normally I turn about around 1000 or so, but I dialed it up a little bit, so that was about 1700 right there. And again, the piece is pretty small. Okay. All right, let's just do a little quick sanding on here, nothing crazy. Just to kind of clean it up. And then we're going to play with the airbrush. So I'm going to go in here with 220. Again, I'm not trying to, I don't mind having a little bit of texture because it's going to get a satin finish as it is. And I'm going to be spraying dye on it, and I'm going to be building a finish with my satin lacquer. Now this is when I should have my little mask on over there. But it really muffles. And I'm not going to sand much, that's why I say I'm not going to get too carried away with it. Okay, a little bit more. Now I probably made the lid just loose enough that I won't be able to sand it in place. We'll see. I can do a little bit, but it's going to spin. But we can clean it up a little bit. It's got enough friction. Again, I would just put this in the chuck. I would put the chuck back on to sand this up on the top here to hold it. Because we got a little wobble going on there right now and all that good stuff. And we haven't really finished this very top here. We haven't decided exactly what we want to do there. But I'm anxious to get some dyes on here. And again, this is kind of experimental. I mean, trying to make this piece of resin look a little bit more like wood. Is it going to be exactly wood? Absolutely not. But I think I'm going to leave the lid on and then we'll just come back and we won't see what's here anyway. So I'm going to leave the lid on as we start to spray a little bit at it. And yes, I'm going to spray on the lathe, which you need to cover everything. I've got a board here that I just pop up. Little work board that covers things pretty well. And by the way, this is the mask that I'm referring to. But you can see it kind of mutes things out if I get it right. But these work really well, and it's got the filters, and you can change the filters and stop breathing all this dust. Again, that's why I'm not sanding too much, but I do have it. I do use it. All right, so there's a nice little view overhead. We've got our little background here, our little board. All right, now, what colors are we going to play with? Well, let's wet this down first to give ourselves an idea of what we've got. It doesn't stay long. So we've got a lot of the nice golds in there. Now, I granted, this would be just a beautiful piece as it is, right? But I said that I wanted to play with dyes on it, and so that's what I'm going to do. But it's a beautiful piece of resin, but it's got its browns and reds and golds in there. Now, like I said, again, it's going to get a base that, will be down here. And I'm going to move this other end camera out just a little bit so that if we want to look at that, we can. Okay. So, airbrush, I've got two of them empty, or they just got solvent in them. And so like I said, honestly, I have not, this is how I work sometimes. I haven't actually tested the technique of making, the dye works great. I've tested it a bunch, dyeing the resins, but I don't want to hide all the colors that I have in this resin. I just want to add a little something to it. So that's going to be my my experiment here today. And I'm going to cut this about 50% in the cup. So I put about 50% of denatured alcohol in the cup. And if I can do this without spilling it, put it back over my holder. I should have opened those earlier. This is when you need an assistant to hand you your jars, your bottles opened. Okay, now this is brown. This is the Chromacraft, the Nick Agar Signature Series aniline dyes. They're alcohol-based. They've got a little bit of resin in them, a little bit of shellac. And so we can thin that with alcohol. Denatured or 90% or above isopropyl. And so I'm just going to add, let me show you, let me go to the overhead for you. So you can see I'm about 50%, I want this really thin. I'm about 50% just straight denatured alcohol in here. Because I don't want to hide my resin colors, okay? And I'm going to get myself a little piece of test wood here. I'll use this white one. And this is the Grex airbrush. This is the XGI. This is the entry level. All the internal workings on the Grex airbrushes are the same. It's just the fit of the hand grips, and it is a dual stage. So you can see how that's a nice I'm getting a nice light color there as that thing keeps rolling around. I want to dial it way back, so I'm just getting a mist of color. All right. And I'm going to turn this. This will turn about, I think this one turns at about 100 RPMs. My jet next door turns at 50, which is great. It's like a rotisserie. Let's see if I can get this at 100 or not. And we're just going to add a little extra color to it without hiding the resin colors. Okay? You see how we start to pick up that brown tone there without hiding the resin? You know, I've not seen, and I'm not saying that I invented this or anything. People, I never thought of using dyes on the resins before, but it works great. I first started doing it when I had pieces of resin that were just a horrible color, and then I found that I could dye them another color. And I'm not going to get carried away up here because we're going to be changing that. But that's what I first used it for, was just taking a really ugly, some scraps. When I would dye my excess or cast my excess resin, I would add, it would be just whatever was left over. I'd take all the dregs and I'd have this really ugly color, and I've got some around here. And then I found that I could dye them, and the dye stays on and it does great. It really colors it up well. So I'm super happy. Okay, so that was a little bit of brown. And I'm going to go with an olive green next and add a little bit of the olive green. This is the olive green. So this is the brown. That's the basis of what we just sprayed. And here's the olive green. I'm going to go really light with the olive green to add another hue. And then I'm going to come in with a black at the end and at the bottom and kind of darken out this bottom. That's kind of my plan. Okay? Now, again, does it look like grain striations? Not so much. And see, I can also just turn this by hand if I want to. And turning by hand might be just as not good as having it spin at 100 RPMs. So my thought is that this is going to look more like a burl per se, with all these different colors in it. And when we throw some lacquer on it, we'll see what we're really dealing with. So now I've learned my lesson this time. I'm going to open up my jar first. I'm going to open up my dye jar before I take the top off the airbrush. If anybody's got any kind of questions, fire away. And again, I'm going to thin this way down. It's going to add a little bit of this greenish tint to it. You can see here the tint and the color in the bottle. I'm leaving just a tad of brown in there because I don't want this green to be overpowering. You can see that, and then we go right in. So when you mix like this, it's not repeatable. There's no way that I could measure these ratios. So that's not what I'm trying to achieve today. And I start at the bottom where I know I want it to be the darkest, where I'm going to actually put the black on. So I want to bring this blend up a little bit further up the body. I'm thinking back to, and I have to change that over for you. I'm thinking back to, I've got the picture that I posted in my head, and thinking about how that old patinaed piece of wood is almost black at the bottom, and then it's lightens up as it goes, but it's still a dark brown, and then there's highlights up on the rim there. So that's kind of what I've got in my head, and I'm working from this mental picture to get there. So overhead now where you can see, and I can make this plenty brown here because I'm going to make the very bottom of it black, and then I can just have a gradient coming up into here, and that's why I have it thinned out a whole lot. You know, I thought about another technique which I'll have to experiment with, and I encourage somebody else to try this, is you could put the dye on fairly heavy and actually comb it, like with a wire brush, to get grain striations if you're so inclined. And I'm going to leave this area pretty light, and I'm going to darken this up with some more of this. And again, with this two-stage direct airbrush, I can control how much air and the fluid. And I think I just ran out, so I'm going to make another batch in here. Oh, it looks like I still got some in there. There it is. I just have it real thin. So it's really a toner or a shader, if you think about it. And again, we're going to turn this again, so I'm not going to get carried away there. Okay, let's see how we're doing. I've got another brush over there. I'm going to leave this one. I've got another brush that I'm going to add the black to. So I'm going to leave this one with our kind of our green-brown mix. And this is another one of the Grecs. And this one has a little bit of an ergonomic grip on it. You can find all these on the Spiracraft website. And I will be doing some more strictly airbrush projects out here, if you will. All right, that's empty of solvent now. Find my black. About 50% solvent. Switch it to the overhead. And this will be a very obviously thinned black. So what I'm doing is I'm using my test piece of wood here. There we go. And you can see, and I've got it to where it's just spraying a very light amount. The adjustment back here on the back allows me to control that. So at the very bottom, I'll go with my close to black color. And then I can just pull up. And I pull the gun away. I'll show you here. So I started out close, and then I pulled the gun away, and can't wait. You see it actually better back up on the overhead. So I started out close up, and then as I come up, I bring the gun further away, and it opens up the pattern. Now up here on the top, let's say I want to put some age right in that little groove. I'm going to actually dial it down. Dial down my air. And I'll come in real close. Because the closer I am, the finer the line is. Hopefully you can see what that's doing there. And then we'll come back with some brown, but that'll give us a real dark section right in there. And let's say we wanted to increase our shadow in the underneath, we can do the same thing. Because remember, this is the light area because that's just where people have grabbed the lid for 100 years. So I'm gonna go back with the brown green mix now and blend that black in a little bit more. See how much I have left in here? It looks like I have enough. And then we'll let this dry real quick. And we'll put a little satin lacquer on it. Oh, you clogged up. I may have to change guns. I had this one out the other day. Oh, I know what I did. I turned all my air off, dummy. There we go. And I'll go back to the end camera for the top. I'm going to put a little bit more brown into this, just a fuzz. There we go. I think this gun, unfortunately, because I have had it, even though it was clean, I had it clean this morning. There we go. It's giving me a little trouble. There we go. There we go. All right, and then we'll go to the overhead. And our brown is blending back in with the black that we put in here. And then we'll come back into our black here and just pull that brown all the way up across the piece. Very lightly. So we're blending all the way from the bottom up. And just for yuck, since we're here, that's how much we've changed that, just so you know. We'll just go ahead and get a little something underneath the rim there.
I'm very pleased. It really does look like a well-worn, patinaed piece of wood with some strange undertones and undercurrents of colors. I think I'm real happy with that, the way that's looking. How do you measure a fuzz? It's just a little bit more than a smidge and less than a tad. You know, just somewhere in that range. Experiment is what I'll say. I'll say experiment until you find just what you're hunting for. And this top, you know, I can work on this top some more. I think I want to do a little more on this top in the brown. Let me pop you back into the overhead here where you can see what I'm doing. I want a little more blending of the brown with that black. And again, the beauty is that all our resin colors and tones, especially the iridescent gold, that's still underneath in there. It's still doing its thing. That top needs a little more work. And while we're waiting for the body to dry, I'm going to add a little more brown, and I'm going to go a little brown, just a fuzz for Brian, and a fuzz of olive. And like I said, this is not a ratio that you can repeat. You just have fun, experiment, and play with this one. And then thin it back down with my denatured alcohol. And I'll put you back on the overhead. You can see where I'm working on the top here. My black was a little too, the transition was a little too harsh. Again, this section right in here is going to get turned, so I'm not terribly concerned about it. If I put this on the end, put it back on, put you on the end camera, now you can see how that's blending in. You've got a little bit of a light gleam on there from the light bulbs in here. But it takes that and blends that black in nicely. So Brian, when you were playing with that holoform, this is what I was talking about with the airbrush lets you blend these colors until you get where you want to be. Okay? So I'm gonna let that lid dry, and I'm gonna run a little bit of solvent through both these guns, put the caps back on my bottles, and then I'm gonna hit this with a little bit of satin lacquer and see what we got, and then that'll be our day, because we've had a lot of fun, and it's 12:53, so I'm actually going to be just about right on time. 1/8 of a pinch, Arthur says. That sounds about right. Now, if I was actually wanted to make these mixtures, I would use a syringe, a real small syringe, and measure it out in the milliliters, so that I could repeat it. Today, I wasn't going to go to that extreme. I decided I would just have fun, just mix them on the fly, and go from there. So I'm just going to run a little bit of denatured alcohol through here, and I'll clean these up even better. I just don't want them to sit completely with dye in them. What you can't see on the floor behind me is a big pile of wood chips that I was able to just dump some of that old dye off into. So I'm just running, this is straight lacquer that's going through here now. Just enough to get that solvent, or not lacquer, excuse me, denatured alcohol. And like I say, when I finish up here, I'll clean them up when I'm done. And I don't know what you had in mind, but that's really close to the kind of the colors that I'm remembering in the picture, in the piece in the picture.
which makes me quite happy. Without any tests or trials, just winging it. And this piece of resin itself lended itself to that pretty well, just because of the nature of the colors of the resin. Okay, that's enough denatured alcohol in the air. Not quite, the lid's not quite dry, but it will be soon. But we're going to spray the body here. So I've got some satin lacquer. Lacquer is great on these resin pieces. And with the satin, you know, I'm not going to have that high gloss look to it. So it will look more worn, patinaed, used, etc. Again, I'll just leave the lid right in place for this. And so I've got my board in place that covers the lathe for the most part. First it'll be kind of glossy, but then when it flattens out, it will be nice and satin. And that looks just, it looks like coffee. Just that, I'm super happy with this. And yet I have inside there, I have the gold glitter or the pearlescent showing. Let's do the end for you, even though the dye wasn't completely dry. I know the light makes it a little bit harsh on there. And I'll take some pictures of this with the still camera and post them up today. And again, we still get to make a base for it. So I'll put a white paper towel under it, give you a little more contrast. Hey, Michael, you coming in? Last minute. There we go. I don't have my stool, or I would zoom in some more. I'll take some up close pictures of this, because if I don't know how it's looking, I'll look at Facebook there. Okay, I can see. It's a little bit darker in my monitor. So as I turn this, I'm turning this around. I mean, that is real close, at least in as far as I'm concerned. Do I spray the inside with lacquer, Don? Yes, I would. Once I went back in there and finished hollowing it out, I would put the lacquer on the inside as well. The colors really are a good match. And even looking at it on screen live there on Facebook, it's a little dark. It's a little darker when you see it in person. It's a little bit lighter, and obviously because I'm about 6 inches away from it, so I'll just put it on some kind of a base. And that's the beauty, is I can put it on any of my little test bases just to take a picture. So we'll make a nice base for this. But it really does. It looks like a piece of wood. Now, why would we do it? Why would we make a piece of resin look like a piece of wood? Hey, it's fun. It's interesting. You should wear some gloves. Yes, I should wear some gloves. Facebook user, you are correct. I do have them. I just didn't put them on today. Sometimes I do when I'm mixing my resin, but you're correct. I should wear gloves. This is really, really close to what I was hoping for, color-wise. So I'm quite happy and pleased with that, the way that came out. And again, I'll pop you through the camera angles. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the overhead. I'm going to zoom this end camera in and see if we can't get you right in on that lid just a little bit more. It looks like the lights are going to be a problem. You're going to have the shine. Yeah. But I'll give you this perspective of it from the end, so that you can see kind of what it's looking like. Again, that gloss will go down to a satin And that's exactly what I was after. Again, I'm about as happy as I get out here with the look. You know, some days I'm not so happy with what I got today. I'm really pleased with this. It is 1 o'clock. I'm also on time. I appreciate everybody joining me today. I hope you picked up a lot of tips. Hey, you got questions? Message me in Facebook Messenger, info@spirecraft.com if you have email questions. Anything questions about the products, the Grex airbrush, the Chromacraft dyes, or the lacquer, any of the tools, the EasyWood tools that I use, the Sorby Chuck, it's all in the Spidercraft shop. Everything there. That's where you can get all the goodies that we use out here. You have questions, don't hesitate to ask. That's what I'm here for. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Art. Thank you, everybody. I had a lot of fun today. This is one of my better, because, you know, like I say, you guys who know me, I just wing it. I come out with the basic concept of a plan, and I go. And it either works or it doesn't. Today it worked, and it worked quite well. So I'm quite pleased with this. We'll continue this on. I'll make a base for it and stuff. But thank you, everybody. Have a great week. Be safe. And we will see you here in the not too distant future. I may take a break. May be off next week. I'll let you know. But thank you, everybody. I'm going to leave you with this overhead shot as I go to turn things off. I had a wonderful time. And again, thank you, everybody.